came to the door for Jackson. When I went around back, I could hear her screaming when I got here. The girl? The girl, yeah, the little girl. She was going nuts, and she's covered in blood. She's got cuts all over her.
Really bad news. Your wife passed away.
What happened? Sit down. Mom, Dad. No.
This is going to be incredibly difficult.
Tuesday, 3rd March, 2020. Detective Kenneth Deese picked up a call on his radio that made his pulse quicken. A welfare check had been requested at a house located in the Black Axis neighborhood of Akron, specifically on Scudder Drive in the 1900 block. The moment Kenneth heard the address, he felt something twist in his gut. That wasn't just any house. That was the home of his best friend, Steve Powell. He wasted no time and dialed Steve's number. Steve answered with a voice that sounded a little too calm. He told Kenneth that his wife Brenda and their daughter Sydney were home. Kenneth knew Steve well enough to sense something hidden beneath those words. He didn't push for more. He just told him to hold tight because the officers were already at the scene. He ended the call, but his mind kept spinning. This wasn't a routine check. Something was waiting behind that front door. And Kenneth Deese wasn't ready for what he was about to find.
Wait, she's in the ground. So there's...
Who is it?
My mom! Someone broke in the back window.
All right, hold on.
And she's on the ground. And there's
Hold on. Where's your mom? Okay, stay right here.
No, there's so much blood. No, please!
Man!
She's in the corner now! No!
Stop! Hold on, we gotta figure out what's going on.
1300.
Can you sit down? Can you sit down?
Oh, no, get that 32 roll. We gotta put it down.
Start some more. Take her outside. Come on. Come on.
Is she gonna be okay?
Come on.
I want my dad.
Huh?
I want my dad.
What happened? What's going on? What's going on?
We heard a bang. We heard a bang. And she told me to get out. And then I heard screaming. So I came back and she was on the ground.
Okay, you heard a bang.
Out back. There was a bang. Someone broken.
The officer led Sydney outside while another officer searched the house for signs of whoever had broken in. But the officers hadn't yet called in on the radio that everything was under control or code 4. That alone was enough to keep every police car in the area on high alert. By protocol, any unit nearby would start moving toward the scene the moment officers stepped inside. While all this was happening, Steve Powell was on his way home. He would arrive to find his daughter with a deep wound on her hand and his wife lying inside the house in a terrible state. What he saw in that moment would change everything and leave him asking questions he wasn't ready to face.
Yeah. What's going on? I don't know. We just got dad. I'm the dad.
Okay,
Sydney. I don't know. Okay. I don't know. What? What the hell? Where's my wife?
The window's broken, Dad.
Where?
The back window's broken in.
So you're gonna have to. The house is inside there. So. Is she okay?
I don't know. She was
Go check the lady in the house. Okay. She's got minor cut.
She's got cuts on her hands.
Okay.
So.
She's got cuts on her hand.
Yeah.
Take care of her.
Dave, I think this is, are you dad?
Yeah, I'm the dad.
Can you stay here with them?
The officers asked Steve to wait outside. They wouldn't let him cross the threshold. Inside the house, the officers combed every room searching for the person who had broken in. But what they found inside was anything but ordinary. Brenda, the mother, had suffered multiple wounds that defied the pattern of a simple break-in. It didn't look like the work of a random intruder. Still, they pressed on. They searched the basement and every corner of the house because in that moment, they were certain of one thing. Brenda wasn't going to make it, and the Powell home was about to become something much darker than Steve had ever imagined.
Just put up some crime scene tape. As soon as AFD gets here, they're going to pronounce her, I'm sure. Sam, you want to check her? I don't think it breathes.
You want me to secure it from the outside, or?
Yeah, because the window's in the back here. There's blood all over the back. I came in through the back door. I had to move the couch. I gotta clear the basement. Basement here, bud.
Acting policeman or make yourself known.
The search inside the house turned up no sign of anyone hiding, but it left the officers with a flood of questions. In the kitchen, they found a cast-iron skillet stained with blood. Nearby, a large kitchen knife was also marked with blood. But what truly rattled the investigators was the window Sidney claimed had been broken during the break-in. Most of the glass lay scattered outside the house, not inside. Normally, glass would fall indoors if it had been shattered from the outside. That single detail shifted everything. The officers knew they had to take a closer look outside. They moved to the backyard, determined to either prove or dispel their growing suspicions. What they might find out there could change the entire story.
You go to 5.
After thoroughly searching the house, the officers uncovered a trail of questions that didn't align with the story Sidney had told. None of the doors had been forced open or even showed signs of an attempted break-in. The number of wounds her mother had sustained didn't match the pattern of an ordinary home intrusion. And that glass outside the house, it told its own story. If there was an explanation for all these questions, there was only one person who could provide it. Sidney Powell. But there was a problem.
Hey, Sydney. Hello? Sydney? Can you hear me? Sydney. Here we are. Right?
Sidney had fallen into a complete silence after being escorted out of the house. She wouldn't respond to any questions. Yet she was alert and followed instructions without hesitation. What was she holding back, and what truth might break the silence? This question becomes the detective's top priority, and they're going to find the answer. The investigators knew they had to start with the one person who might help them. Steve Powell. They decided to ask him to accompany them to the station while Brenda and Sidney were rushed to the hospital. When Steve entered the interview room, he had no idea about anything except that someone had forced their way into his home and that his wife and daughter had been hurt. Detective Kenneth Dees, Steve's friend, was by his side from the first moment, trying to ease his nerves and answer his questions. But the moment Detective Whitten stepped in, everything shifted. He carried with him the evidence gathered by the officers along with the devastating news from the hospital. Brenda had been pronounced dead as soon as she arrived.
This is the consent to search here. How do you spell your first name?
Steven.
Who'd you get a call from? Or what happened?
Got a call from him. Call from me.
Oh, okay.
He said there was a call, went out, a distress call from the University of Mount Union where my daughter was going, and said, female in distress. I said, well, that's funny because Brenda's there, my wife. So I said, well, let me call. So I called Brenda, and it rings and rings on the cell phone, no answer. I call Sidney back, rings and rings and rings, no answer. I call Brenda back, ring, no answer. I'm pacing around. I call Chief back, and as I'm on the phone with him, telling him there's no answer, my doctor calls me back. I said, oh, Mom's on the phone with Mount Union. I said, well, cops are on the way. And she went, there's a break-in. And she just started going off. She said, well, there's been somebody broke into the house. There's blood everywhere.
What Steve told the investigators was that he had spoken to Sidney and she was acting completely normal. She said her mother had been on the phone with the university. But the moment Sidney heard the police were coming, she spiraled into a panic. She started insisting that someone had broken into the house. That detail confirmed every suspicion the officers had. They now knew no one had entered the house, and they believed Brenda had been killed by her own daughter. But the question still hung heavy in the air. Why would Sidney do something like that?
Is she still attending Mount Union?
Well, as far as we knew up until today, yes. But apparently not for the last I don't know, maybe a couple weeks. Because I tried to get on, I don't know, this was a couple weeks ago, I tried to get on the website I like to check the balance, and she's been coming home on and off on the weekends a little, just odd, little frequently. Never seemed odd for sorts, you know, I mean, it's acted perfectly normal. But she came back and I'm like questioning, well, why aren't you at school? Why are you coming home? And, you know, it's all the same, just, you know, the vague non-answers. And so she turned off her like Life 360 app. But I think on that app, you can't see where she's going. You can kind of see highlights of where the phone was. Well, you know, I'm kind of looking, I'm like, well, you're not where you're supposed to be. This is kind of weird. So I called her on it. And I said, you know, Mom, because I went on, so then I tried to go on the Mount Union website and I say, I figured, I was just see if there's anything on that. Parents only have so much, you know.
Right.
I'm willing to pay the bill and everything, but if you want to find anything about it, you're out of luck.
Right.
So, but I figured I'm going to try. So I sign on. It says your password or your login or password ID doesn't work. I'm like, well, that's weird. So I recovered my password and I put in the right answer and it didn't work. And I did that a few times and I texted her back and said, something's not working. What's wrong? She comes up with something that says the website's down, basically. And you know, but I'm working on it. So a few days pass later. Nothing seems out of the ordinary until maybe it was today, I tried to get back. Oh, Mount Union calls me today because I sent them an email that says, my user ID is this, my ID is this, my password's not working, my recovery answer won't work, and I know where I was born, I know my car, and it does when you type in your recovery email, the system just it didn't recognize it. So I sent Mount Union Building an email and says, basically, what's wrong? So she called me back today and says, well, the reason you can't get on, long story short, is your daughter's unenrolled. So I went, what? What's going on? So I text Sydney. I'm like, oh, give me a call. I have a question to ask you. I call her, no answer. I say, give me a call, I have a question to ask you. And I look on that little Life 360 app, and her card was at home. I'm like, wow, that's kind of weird. So I leave my phone at home so she can't track me. And I go home, and there she is. She's at home. Perfectly normal. She's crying because I said, what's going on? Are you not going to school? She goes, I'm overwhelmed in school, and I don't really like what I'm doing, and it seems like it's a waste of my time and your money. I said, well, but that's all part of it. Nobody's going to tell you you need to do what you're doing when you're 20. You need to figure it out, but you have to work through the problem. You can't just ignore the problem and have it go away. It's not.
I'm sorry. When did you have that conversation with
today? Like 11:30. I don't remember. Yeah, it was. I left work because it was before lunch. It was maybe around 11 because I was probably there from 11 to 11:30. So from her phone call. So that's what I said. You know, my recommendation is call the school back, call the student union, get reinstated. And then if you have to take the summer off, take the summer off. Figure out what you want to do. She was going to take summer class because she changed a couple majors. And that's what she goes, all my friends have their shit together and I don't. I said, well, I'm 54 and I don't have my shit together. You know, don't look at it that way. You need to work the problem. You can't just have the problem sit there and ignoring it is not going to do you any good. So I went back, I called my wife from my daughter's phone. She picks up, she was working down at Children's. And she goes, what's wrong? And I basically told her, I said, you know, I mean, Sydney, I think the reason we can't get on is because she's unenrolled. She hasn't been going to school. She goes, well, and then we talked to Jill, her boss, and says, I'll see if I can come home. So I left. On the way home, I either on my way back to work or when I'm at work, I call Brenda and she's like, well, I'm just pulling in now. So I let it go, and then I get a text from Brenda that says, she says something to the effect of she was on the phone waiting for someone from Student Affairs to call me back. And that was at 12:36. She said, how much was the check that they're returning? Because Mount Union told me, too, before, in the phone conversation, we're returning your check. I'm like, well, you know, nobody would return a check. So I said, I texted her back at 12:36, and I said I had no idea. It was electronic. I said, check on the scholarship too. Make sure she didn't lose that at 12:37. At 12:39, I got on the bank account and I said, maybe. I go, $5,435. And then at 12:41, what did you discuss with her? And that was it.
What Steve shared with the investigators didn't only fill in the blanks about Brenda's final hours, but it did give them the motive they had been searching for. Maybe there had been an argument between mother and daughter about Sydney's academic struggles. There was a real chance she might lose her scholarship. But could a simple argument between a mother and her daughter really lead to something so unthinkable? It was a question that haunted the investigators. Was Sydney in her right mind during that fight with her mother? And more importantly, was she mentally stable? The answer would only be found in one place: Mount Union University. That was where Sydney's friends, teachers, and everyone who had seen her over the last 2 years would have more insight than even her own parents. But before the investigators could begin questioning everyone connected to Sydney, they had one last duty to perform. They had to tell Steve Powell that his wife had died and that the person responsible was his own daughter. Detective Whitten was given the responsibility of breaking that devastating news to Steve. He tried to push that burden onto Kenneth Deese, but he couldn't bring himself to tell his closest friend the truth. The weight of it was too heavy to lay on someone he knew so well.
Well, really bad news. Your wife's passed away. We're not sure. It looks like I don't think someone broke into the house. I don't know if your wife and I got in an argument physically. I mean, the window was broken, but there's no forced entry into the house. The window's broken, but nobody actually came through that window. And the sliding door was unlocked. So, did your wife and daughter ever have like really heated arguments in that?
No. Clearly, they think Sydney did this. I was too. She's going to live forever. Wife's dead.
After the news had been delivered to Stephen Powell, and as he himself broke the devastating truth to his son waiting outside, Sydney had received the necessary medical treatment at the hospital. She was then taken back to the police station to be prepared for transfer to Akron General Medical Center. She would be placed under psychological observation for 72 hours. While Sydney was in the hospital, the investigators had already begun their search for answers at Mount Union University. They went to take statements from Michelle Gaffney, the associate dean, who had been the one to alert the police about the incident. In her statement, Michelle recounted how during a call between herself and Brenda Powell, she had been in the office of Dean Frazier, who was speaking with Brenda about Sydney's status at the university. The call started normally. Suddenly, a loud scream shattered the moment, followed by a series of heavy thuds. Dean Frazier and Michelle both tried to call out, but there was no reply. Michelle had dashed from the office and told Tara, the assistant, to get Brenda's address as quickly as possible. At the same time, she tried to contact Akron Police directly, instead of dialing 911 because she knew she could reach them faster that way. The call went silent after about 6 or 7 thuds and screams. Then they tried calling twice, but no one picked up. On the third attempt, Sydney answered the phone. "Yes, this is Brenda." Michelle immediately realized the voice wasn't Brenda. She said, "This isn't Brenda, this is Sydney." And then the line went dead again. Michelle didn't hesitate. She called Akron Police right away and gave them everything she knew. While the investigators listened to Michelle's statement, their minds were turning over every detail they had gathered about that day and what had come before. The picture now unfolding for them was that Sydney had been hiding her struggles at university, and when her secret was exposed, and her mother reached out to the university, Sydney lashed out in a way no one had expected. She didn't just attack her mother once she struck her over and over. She was aware enough to try to fool the associate dean by pretending to be her mother. And when she learned the police were on their way, she tried to throw them off by claiming someone had broken into the house and smashing the window glass herself. Every piece of evidence pointed in one direction. This wasn't the act of someone who had lost control. It was the act of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. But even so, the investigators knew they had to find any proof or witness that could confirm whether Sydney had any mental health issues that might have influenced her actions. They learned that Sydney had not been on any psychiatric medication on a regular basis. She was known for her sharp mind and outstanding academic record. If there was one person who could confirm or deny any sign of mental instability in Sydney during the past 2 years, it would be one person, her close friend and roommate at the university. Lauren Curry.
Lauren, first of all, thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
We know that this whole thing's difficult for you, and you're trying to make sense of it, and so are we.
Mm-hmm.
In that interview, the investigators had 3 questions burning in their minds. If Lauren Curry could answer them, the entire case would be crystal clear. Had there been any signs that Sydney was going through a psychological crisis? What was her relationship with her mother really like? Had Sydney been using any substances on a regular basis? The answers to those questions might hold the key to understanding why that day had ended the way it did, and whether the girl they were dealing with was simply troubled, or something much more complicated.
So she just wasn't, did it seem like, how did this like kind of change affect her? I mean, did it affect her moods at all? Did she seem concerned about it? Or tell us about that.
I think she kept a lot of stuff hidden because when we were just talking or with our friends, she always seemed happy. Like, she seemed okay, like I said, I couldn't tell until the end where she was kind of just like struggling and she kind of was sad and just like, Lauren, I don't know what to do. I'm like, well, you just need to find what makes you happy and like, just, you need to find what you like to do. And I don't know, I think it did make her a little upset because she was confused, because I think she felt like everybody around her kind of had figured out what they wanted to do and she hadn't, so I think that kind of affected her.
So when do you think that it really started affecting her, that like, look, this is, I'm really having problems and this is, I have to, I mean, look, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Tell us when you think that it really started affecting her, like, often.
Like her anxiety? Well, I know she's had anxiety for a while, but I think it was this last semester, like starting coming back in January, is when it really started, like she was kind of more like upset because she really didn't know what she wanted to do, like she didn't like her classes.
Let's talk about this. You're her best friend, and I know this is difficult, but tell us about her relationship with her parents.
Her and her parents had a really good relationship. Like, her mom and her were best friends. Probably, like, they did everything together. Like, one of the reasons she went home was to be with her mom. They were always close. She never said anything bad about her mom. She never ever talked about having an argument with her mom. Like, I can't recall every time she'd be going home, she's like, I can't wait to see my mom. Or when she goes home for weekends, she'd be like, oh, my mom wants me to come home so we can hang out and like watch movies. And she loved being home. And she had a good relationship with her dad too. Like, I know that her and her dad liked to watch like Star Wars together, and he always like cooked food at the house. Like, he liked cooking, and she'd always talk about how good his food was and what they would get each other for Christmas and things about spring break. Like, she loved being home, like, with her family.
When she's, once she got to Mount Union, or anytime actually, did Sydney ever drink alcohol at all, or she did? Mm-hmm. Okay, just kind of describe that for us. I mean, we've all been college age, so, and...
No. I don't usually, like, drink a lot, and if I do, it's one, but she liked to drink. There was an incident in the fall of our freshman year where she drank too much, and she wasn't alcohol poisoned, but she did end up in the hospital. And her mom came and got her at like 2 in the morning, but she did end up in the hospital that day because she drank like mixed drinks and drank too much. But usually after that, her and I were together, and if she did drink, I usually kind of like slowed her down after I knew kind of her limit because she's small, so kind of knew her limit. But she did drink.
What situation was that in? Was that like just like a party or something, or?
I was in the dorm room watching movies because I didn't want to go out. So she went out with some other her friends. I wasn't really close with them. I was close with one of them, but not the rest. And I got a call around like 11 saying Sydney was at a party and she was throwing up and she just wasn't good and to come pick her up.
The investigators emerged from the interview with a clearer picture. Sydney had been dealing with significant anxiety and some emotional challenges linked to her struggles at university. But she wasn't detached from reality. There were no obvious signs of psychological issues that could explain what happened. On top of that, she had a very close relationship with her mother. Her life at university wasn't much different from any other girl her age. That left the investigators with only one path to follow.
Murder trial underway for a daughter charged with killing her own mother.
Investigators say that Sydney Powell stabbed her mother multiple times inside their Akron home. She's pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, and today we heard from witnesses.
And 19 News, the only local camera inside the courtroom. Everywhere at 5, see a New Yorker has more from the Summit County Courthouse.
You attended the autopsy? Yes.
Prosecutors say it was a gruesome crime.
We know that Brenda was stabbed about 30 times.
Yes.
And Sydney has blood on her knee, correct?
Yes.
Does it make sense that maybe Sydney was kneeling down and stabbing Brenda?
I'd say it's possible.
And all the stab wounds of Brenda were from the neck up?
Majority of them, yes.
23-year-old Sydney Powell is charged with murdering her mother, 50-year-old Brenda Powell. Sydney chose not to listen to some of the witnesses as they described the crime scene and left the courtroom for some of the testimony. Investigators say back in March of 2020, the then 19-year-old woman stabbed her mother, Brenda, inside their Akron home after their argument turned physical. An Akron detective described what a witness told him in a 911 call.
They were on the phone, and there was a lot of screaming going on, so he couldn't really say if it was like a physical fight, but just heard like a lot of yelling and screaming going on. And then he tried calling back twice, and there was no call back.
When officers arrived, they found Brenda suffering from stab wounds. She died at the hospital. Sydney was also taken to the hospital with minor injuries, but was arrested and released on bond. Monday in court, jurors viewed some of the more than 10,000 pages of text messages between Sydney and her friends leading up to the crime. They also viewed police body cams showing the aftermath, Sydney with bloody wounds and blood at the home. Per Judge Kelly McLaughlin, media is not allowed to film any of that evidence with our cameras.
On 28 September 2023, the court delivered its sentence. Sydney Powell was sentenced to life behind bars with a minimum of 15 years before she could even be considered for parole. That single decision sealed her fate. But as the courtroom emptied, one question still echoed in the minds of those who had followed the case. Why did she do it? And what would the future hold for a girl whose life had taken such a dark turn?
Hi everyone, this is Kelly. Before I begin this true crime story, I need to point out that while preparing for this case, I came across many odd things. The first was when I posted a short video about the crime, and the initial comments were in support of the convicted rather than the victims, which is very unusual. Therefore, I want to clarify that all the information presented in this video is sourced from public records, and the analyses I conducted using AI might not be entirely accurate. My deepest condolences go out to the victims' families. Lastly, please be aware that the content in this video might be intense for some viewers, so consider this a warning. One final thing, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out a lot. Mackenzie Shirilla was the youngest daughter in a family of 4. Born on August 2nd, 2005, she was a child who seemed to have it all. Her parents, Natalie and Stephen Shirilla worked tirelessly to fulfill her every desire. Showering her was all she could ask for. From a young age, Mackenzie's calm smile and striking beauty made her a favorite among those around her. She was the girl everyone adored during her childhood, but beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect upbringing lay cracks that would one day shape a very different person. Natalie and Stephen's parenting style, though well-meaning, was the kind that often leads to unintended consequences. They gave Mackenzie everything she wanted, never questioning whether their indulgence might do more harm than good. Over time, her requests became demands, and her parents, eager to keep her happy, turned those demands into their duty. What they believed to be love and care became the seeds of a growing arrogance that would alienate Mackenzie from others. By the time Mackenzie entered high school, she carried with her a chilling sense of pride. This pride, nurtured by years of unquestioning indulgence, made her a force few dared to challenge. At school, Mackenzie was the kind of girl you would rather avoid altogether. Yet, aligning yourself with her meant escaping the wrath of her sharp tongue and relentless bullying. She exuded a cold confidence, projecting a facade of strength and defiance. Her parents' leniency only fueled her recklessness, allowing her to indulge in behaviors no parent would ever condone. In the school WhatsApp group, Mackenzie quickly became one of the most bothersome presences. Her comments were often hurtful, aimed at cutting others down and asserting her dominance. She thrived on showing herself as a figure of control, someone the other students couldn't easily ignore. One morning, she initiated a group call at an absurdly early hour, disrupting everyone's routine, only to announce that she couldn't pick any outfit for the day, and they had to help her choose. It wasn't about needing their help. It was Mackenzie's way of reminding everyone that she was in charge, the one setting the tone, while the rest were expected to follow. Mackenzie even flaunted her drug use openly, posting photos that left no room for misinterpretation. Her mother, Natalie, would occasionally leave comments on these photos, as though unable or unwilling to confront the darker truth about her daughter. But was this confidence real? Or was it the mask of a girl shaped by love gone too far? Mackenzie's relationships mirrored her upbringing. She got almost everything she wanted. She dated nearly every boy in her close friend group, yet somehow she remained on good terms with all of them. These connections never ran deep. For the boys, she was a fleeting interest, the spark of something romantic that fizzled before it fully ignited. Her ex-boyfriend, Tyler, revealed an unsettling pattern. Mackenzie dated him after she had already been involved with a mutual friend, only to leave Tyler to pursue his best friend, Dominic Russo. It was as if Mackenzie moved through relationships like stepping stones, each one barely satisfying her before she leaped to the next. But Dominic was different. He was the only one who didn't bend to her will, the one who pushed back against the spoiled foundation that shaped her personality. For Mackenzie, this resistance was intoxicating. Dominic became the one person who didn't cater to her whims, and that defiance lit a spark in her that no one else had. So who was Dominic Russo? And what was it about him that ensnared Mackenzie so deeply, setting the stage for a tragedy that would consume everyone around them? Born in 2003, Dominic was one of 8 children. Despite the challenges of raising such a large family, his parents, Christine and Frank Russo, provided a nurturing home filled with love and support. Their efforts molded Dominic into a grounded and charismatic young man. Dominic's calm demeanor and magnetic personality drew people to him. He had a way of speaking that could captivate anyone who listened, earning him a reputation as one of the neighborhood's most admired figures. But Dominic was more than just a charming presence. He was creative and ambitious, with a passion for art and design. At 19, he had already held various jobs and launched his own clothing line. Music was his next dream, one he pursued with quiet determination. When Mackenzie met Dominic, she found herself confronted by someone unlike anyone she had known. He had his own path, his own voice, and most importantly, he didn't yield to her every demand. Dominic treated her as an equal, not as someone to please. For the first time, Mackenzie faced a relationship grounded in mutual respect, or at least, that's how it seemed. Natalie and Stephen Shirilla were thrilled when Mackenzie began dating Dominic. Finally, their daughter had chosen someone who appeared to have ambition and direction, someone they believed could guide her toward a more stable life. Dominic's family, however, was less enthusiastic. They saw through Mackenzie's charm, recognizing her controlling nature and the cracks in her polished exterior. Yet, they trusted Dominic. They believed in his ability to navigate his relationships and protect himself from harm. Or so they thought. Mackenzie and Dominic were two opposites, their stark differences forming the foundation of an attraction that Mackenzie couldn't resist. For her, Dominic was unlike anyone she had ever been with, and that uniqueness was intoxicating. Unwilling to lose him, Mackenzie orchestrated a way to move into Dominic's house. As always, her parents agreed without hesitation, indulging her every whim. But for Dominic's family, her presence was far from welcome. Her controlling demeanor, constant disagreements, and attempts to dominate Dominic created tension that was impossible to ignore. Over time, their relationship unraveled. It became a cycle of arguments, breakups, and reconciliations. Each return was marked by the same issues, leaving Dominic's family convinced that he deserved better. They saw her as a destructive force in his life, but Dominic, ever calm and thoughtful, wasn't ready to give up. He wanted to give Mackenzie one last chance. That changed during an explosive fight in Mackenzie's car. In a moment of anger, she threatened Dominic, telling him she would destroy the car, with both of them inside. The threat was a breaking point for Dominic. Realizing the situation had escalated beyond reason, he called his mother for help, but she wasn't available. Instead, he reached out to a friend. While on the phone, he asked Mackenzie to pull over so he could leave. Her response was chilling. She reiterated her threat, her words caught on the call. This moment would later become critical evidence in uncovering her intentions. After the fight, Dominic cut all ties. For about a week, Mackenzie was left on the outside, unable to reach him, but she wasn't ready to let go. Her attempts to reconnect turned desperate. She showed up at his house, demanding he let her in, threatening serious consequences if he didn't. Dominic, however, had started recording her threats. When he refused to respond, she shouted that she would vandalize his car. When intimidation failed, Mackenzie turned to Dominic's mother, accusing him of mistreating her and insisting she needed her belongings back. His mother, unimpressed, told her she would need to return Dominic's things first. Mackenzie's attempts to manipulate the situation fell flat, but her efforts weren't about possessions. They were about regaining control over the one person who had ever stood firm against her. Desperate, Mackenzie tried a new tactic. She cast aside her pride, reaching out to Dominic with an unusual plea. She claimed she was trying to change, that she wanted to be more mature and build a better relationship. She asked for his help with university papers, hoping to rekindle their connection. Against his better judgment, Dominic softened. Slowly, they reconciled, their relationship returning to what it had been. Within 2 weeks, they were together again. But this time, something felt different. This reunion would not be like the others. This time, it would be final. This time, it would end in tragedy. On Saturday, July 30th, Mackenzie invited Dominic to a party a friend was hosting. She saw it as the perfect opportunity to spend time together and announced to their friends that they were officially back together. Dominic agreed and decided to bring his best friend, Davian Flanagan, along. Davian, always up for a good time with Dominic, eagerly accepted the invitation. Davian Flanagan was more than just a friend to Dominic. He was his closest confidant, someone who shared the same drive and ambition. Like Dominic, Davian had big dreams and the determination to chase them, despite the challenges life had thrown his way. Davian's story was one of resilience. He was the adopted son of Scott and Cimes Flanagan, but his early life had been anything but easy. Born into a family plagued by addiction, he spent his formative years navigating the foster care system, a turbulent journey that could have crushed his spirit. Yet, when Scott and Jaime welcomed him into their home, Davian began to thrive. In no time, his strength and determination shone through. He joined the local football team and quickly became a standout player, earning recognition as one of the most admired athletes in his neighborhood. But football wasn't his only dream. Davian had a clear vision for his future. He wanted to open his own barbershop, a goal he had already begun working toward by submitting his application to to Barber College. It was a dream that symbolized his hard-earned resilience, but tragically, it was a dream he would never get the chance to achieve. On that Saturday evening, Mackenzie Shirilla and Dominic Russo met up and headed to a party at a friend's house. It was a night that seemed perfectly normal to everyone there. The mood was light, with no signs of tension between the couple. Friends chatted, laughed, and drank. Mackenzie and Dominic, like others at the party, indulged in alcohol and drugs. At around 5:15 a.m., Mackenzie and Dominic decided it was time to leave. Davian Flanagan, Dominic's best friend, asked for a ride home. Mackenzie hesitated, saying they had other plans, but Dominic assured her they could drop him off together. Reluctantly, Mackenzie agreed, if only she hadn't. By 5:38 a.m., Mackenzie was behind the wheel, seatbelt secured. Dominic sat beside her in the passenger seat, with Davian in the back. The car cruised down Pearl Road, approaching the intersection of Progress and Alameda Streets. What started as an ordinary drive took a horrifying turn as Mackenzie accelerated, the car surging to 100 miles per hour on a street barely 3/4 of a mile long. In less than 30 seconds, the car veered off course and slammed into a concrete building at the Progress Drive Business Park. The sound of the crash shattered the silence of the industrial area, a place typically deserted at that hour. But one woman nearby heard the devastating noise. Stepping outside, she saw the wreckage and immediately called the police. The first responders arrived swiftly. Inside the mangled vehicle, they found Dominic Russo lifeless in the passenger seat. Davian Flanagan, seated in the back, had also succumbed to the impact. Mackenzie Shirilla, however, was still breathing. An ambulance helicopter landed, and paramedics rushed to stabilize Mackenzie. She was quickly transported to the hospital, clinging to life. The question that would haunt everyone who knew them remained: what had happened in the last 30 seconds? Mackenzie was rushed to the hospital, her body battered by multiple injuries. She slipped into a temporary coma, but when she woke up, her first words weren't of grief or confusion. Instead, she turned to the police and asked, "Are you going to revoke my license for 10 years? Her question, detached from the gravity of the situation, left those present stunned. Meanwhile, investigators at the crash site meticulously documented the scene, combing through the wreckage of Mackenzie's car. Among the scattered belongings, they found a stash of mushrooms and a digital scale. These discoveries prompted a drug test, which revealed an alarmingly high level of narcotics in Mackenzie's bloodstream. Doctors speculated that the drugs, along with the seatbelt she had been wearing, the only one in the car to do so, played a critical role in her survival. The drugs, they believed, dulled her body's reaction to the catastrophic impact. As Mackenzie lay in the hospital, the police contacted her mother to inform her of the accident. Distraught, her mother tried reaching Dominic for answers, but his phone remained silent, a grim foreshadowing of the news she was yet to fully grasp. News of the crash spread quickly, shaking the tight-knit community. 3 young lives had been caught in a horrifying accident. While many mourned, whispers of suspicion began to grow. At school, Mackenzie's name was on everyone's lips. What started as quiet speculation turned into open gossip, painting Mackenzie as more than just a survivor. Adding fuel to the fire was Mackenzie's absence from Dominic's memorial service. Her father, believing she had endured enough trauma, insisted she stay home, but her decision not to attend left Dominic's friends and classmates furious. To them, her absence spoke volumes. In the halls of the school, rumors swirled. Some students openly questioned whether the crash had been an accident at all. Mackenzie tried to counter the whispers by sharing public declarations of love and sorrow for Dominic. Her social media filled with heartfelt posts about the loss of her soulmate. But the effort rang hollow to those who knew her well. For many, her words weren't enough to erase the growing shadow of doubt. The suspicion that Mackenzie might have played a role in the tragedy refused to fade. From this moment on, the community fractured into 2 opposing camps. On one side were those convinced that Mackenzie had orchestrated the entire incident. They believed every detail, the high speed, her survival while others perished, and the mounting whispers from classmates pointed to a carefully planned tragedy. To them, the circumstantial evidence was enough to paint her as the architect of the crash. On the other side were those who staunchly defended her, arguing that Mackenzie was the victim of a tragic accident and an unfair wave of public judgment. They insisted there was no concrete proof tying her to any malicious intent. For them, the investigation had been tainted by the noise of social media, where speculation and rumor had already branded Mackenzie guilty before the facts were fully uncovered. The debate rippled across the town, growing louder with each passing day. Friends, neighbors, and even family members found themselves taking sides, creating a rift that would linger long after the headlines had faded. But as the case unfolded, one question haunted everyone. Was Mackenzie a victim of circumstance, or the mastermind of a tragedy? To uncover the truth, we must examine all the evidence that led to Mackenzie's conviction and the arguments raised by those who believe she was innocent. The evidence against Mackenzie. The police built their case on 4 key points. First was Dominic's friend's testimony. He revealed that Mackenzie had threatened to crash the car with everyone inside during an argument. This statement planted the idea that the crash was not an accident, but a deliberate act. Second was the surveillance footage. The video showed Mackenzie walking calmly just before driving to the intersection of Progress and Alameda Streets. Her demeanor suggested someone in control, not someone acting impulsively. Third was the analysis of Mackenzie's phone. Investigators found that she had visited the crash site days before the accident. To the police, this was a sign of premeditation. Fourth, and most crucial, was the data from the car's black box, or event data recorder, EDR. The analysis proved that the brakes were not used at all in the 30 seconds leading up to the crash. But it wasn't just the physical evidence. The police also pointed to Mackenzie's behavior after the crash as deeply suspicious. Mackenzie's behavior after the accident. Months after the accident, Mackenzie attended a concert in a wheelchair. The same Mackenzie who had skipped Dominic's memorial, citing grief, now seemed fine celebrating at a concert. This choice outraged many in the community. Shortly after, Mackenzie posted TikTok videos boasting about her drug use. She claimed she could take large amounts without consequences. These posts only deepened public suspicion. Adding fuel to the fire was her Halloween costume. She dressed as a corpse bride, a move that many saw as tasteless, given the tragedy. Finally, Mackenzie's mother stirred further controversy by engaging with a Los Angeles modeling agency. She encouraged them to work with Mackenzie, which many felt was an inappropriate priority. All of this combined to increase the pressure on the police. What had once been considered a tragic accident now seemed like a planned crime. Physical evidence from the crash Mackenzie's movements were tracked via the 360 application on her phone. The data confirmed she had been near the crash site days before the incident. The EDR analysis revealed even more. It showed that no brakes were used, a fact that pointed to prior intent to increase speed. The steering wheel had also turned 140 degrees to the right just before the crash. This raised questions. Was Mackenzie trying to avoid something, or was someone else interfering with the controls? Finally, the video of Mackenzie's driving style raised doubts. Moments before the crash, she was driving calmly and signaling appropriately. Then suddenly, she accelerated to full speed. The question of investigation. Before considering the contradictory evidence, one glaring question remains. Mackenzie was arrested, charged, and convicted, but she was never directly interrogated by the police. How is it possible that such a critical figure in the case was not questioned? The police spoke to everyone remotely connected to the incident, yet Mackenzie herself was not investigated. This omission is shocking and raises doubts about the fairness of the process. On November 4th, 2022, Mackenzie Shirilla was arrested and faced a staggering 15 charges, each carrying the weight of a horrific tragedy. 4 counts of murder, 2 for each victim: Dominic Russo, 20, and Davian Flanagan, 19. 4 counts of felonious assault, again, 2 for each victim. 2 counts of aggravated vehicular homicide, 1 for each life lost in the crash. 2 counts of aggravated vehicular assault, stemming from the serious injuries caused. 1 count of drug possession, for the substances found in her possession at the scene. 1 count of possessing criminal tools, for using those tools in connection with the crime. 1 count of reckless operation of a vehicle, for the manner in which she drove, culminating in the fatal crash. In court, Mackenzie's defense fell short. It lacked the backing of external experts to challenge the prosecution's evidence. The arguments made on her behalf did little to shift the narrative, leaving the jury with the weight of the police's case and the damning evidence it presented. But outside the courtroom, the battle over Mackenzie's innocence raged on. Her supporters argued fervently that the crash was an accident, not a premeditated act. To them, Mackenzie was a victim of her own recklessness, impaired by drugs, but without any intent to harm. They dismissed the notion that she planned to kill herself or her boyfriend, insisting that while her actions were irresponsible, they were not criminally calculated. The evidence supporting Mackenzie Shirilla's innocence has been centered around three main arguments. Let's break these down while exploring how they stack up against the accusations. First, Mackenzie's medical condition. Mackenzie's mother claimed she suffered from POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, a condition that can cause dizziness, fatigue, and an abnormally rapid heart rate when standing. Her supporters argued that this condition might have caused Mackenzie to faint while driving. However, further investigation revealed that while POTS symptoms often occur upon standing, it is exceedingly rare for the condition to cause fainting while seated. Since Mackenzie was sitting in the car at the time of the crash, this argument does not convincingly explain the events. Second, alleged technical defect in the car. The claim that Mackenzie's 2018 Toyota Camry had a defect that caused unintended acceleration is grounded in historical precedent.
The trouble is, in Toyota vehicles like this 2009 Tacoma pickup truck, the gas pedal can get tangled up in the floor mat, causing the vehicle to speed up. Even if the driver pumps the brakes, it's not enough to stop. 5 deaths have been blamed on this unintended acceleration, and the recall was prompted by a crash outside San Diego last summer that killed 4 family members.
In 2014, Toyota settled a lawsuit for $1.8 billion related to similar defects and recalled over 8 million vehicles. Additionally, research indicates that if the gas pedal is pressed hard, it may cause the brakes to become unresponsive. I will leave the link for the study in the description. Mackenzie's supporters also pointed to an image they claim depicts the position of her foot during the crash. This image suggested that her foot was firmly on the gas pedal, but the floor mat was visibly raised, potentially obstructing the pedals. To further analyze this claim, AI-generated insights highlighted key considerations, although I didn't find any source on the internet about this photo except for the supporters' Facebook page. Foot position. The foot was in contact with the gas pedal, with no apparent contact with the brake pedal. Raised floor mat. The mat's position could have interfered with the gas pedal, potentially preventing Mackenzie from fully releasing it. Analysis. While the raised mat might explain some loss of control, the likelihood of the gas pedal being pressed intentionally remained significant. When asked for probabilities, AI analysis estimated a 60 to 70% chance that Mackenzie was pressing the gas pedal intentionally and a 30 to 40% chance that the raised mat or a mechanical malfunction contributed. Third, allegations of judicial bias. Supporters have alleged that the judges and police involved in the case had connections to the victims' families. This claim has fueled skepticism about the fairness of the trial. However, there is currently no publicly available evidence to substantiate these allegations. Without concrete proof, this remains speculation. Now, it's your turn to tell me your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Mackenzie intentionally pressed on gas pedal, or it was anything else? In court, the atmosphere was heavy with grief and tension as the defense and plaintiffs made their final arguments. Mackenzie's mother took the stand, pleading for her daughter. She attempted to take responsibility for Mackenzie's perceived lack of remorse, claiming that her actions, attending concerts, posting videos, and celebrating holidays, were misunderstood as callousness. However, the judge was unmoved. With a firm voice, he said, "All I hear is talk about your daughter. I hear nothing about the victims."
I'm hearing an awful lot about your daughter. I'm not hearing very much about the 2 dead people.
Dominic, okay, I'm asking you for leniency because this was a tragic accident that she does not remember. And Davion, he's a new friend. And I'm so sorry.
What does that mean? His life is worthless?
No. God, no, not at all.
Dominic's mother then addressed the court. Her voice trembled as she spoke of her son's bright future, stolen in an instant. She reminded everyone of the irreversible nature of her loss. Even in the worst moments, she said, the Mackenzie family will still see her, even if it's behind bars. But I will never see my son again. Davian's sister followed, her sorrow palpable. She described the void left by her brother's death, a pain so profound she couldn't imagine how to navigate life without him. Her words painted a picture of a family shattered, struggling to move forward in the face of unimaginable loss. In August 2023, after a 4-day trial, the judge reached his decision. Mackenzie Shirilla, 19 years old, was found guilty on all 15 charges brought against her. The courtroom was silent as the judge announced her sentence. 2 concurrent life sentences with the possibility of parole after 15 years. The verdict brought some closure to the families of Dominic Russo and Davian Flanagan, but the lingering question of Mackenzie's intent would continue to divide the community for years to come.
Yeah, I mean, like, she kept saying, like, I'll give you money, I'll give you my keys, you know, I'll give you anything you want. But when I saw it, I was just like, wow, she actually had $1,000 under it. Like, that's crazy. And it was kind of creepy because she was, like, scared to die. Like, sheesh.
Hey, Ma, it's Johnny. I'm crazy. I'm evil.
That you had parties and order Chinese food with 2 people that you had brutally murdered lying upstairs.
On the morning of Sunday, April 9th, 2017, Jake walked back to his apartment at McGinnis Ferry after taking his dog out. He had no idea that in a few minutes the front of his building would turn into a war zone. Outside his door was a black SUV, windows tinted pitch black, parked too close and too quiet. Something about it felt wrong, but Jake pushed the thought aside and went inside to make coffee. Before the kettle even whistled, a voice boomed through a megaphone calling out his apartment number, then demanding Johnny Ryder step out with his hands up. Jake ran to the living room. Johnny was standing there holding a knife. For a second, Jake thought he was about to die. But Johnny dropped the blade, pulled him into a hug, and whispered that he was sorry. Jake didn't ask questions. He grabbed his sister, lifted his mother from the wheelchair, opened the door to a wall of red laser sights dancing across his chest. SWAT officers barked orders. Hands up, down on the ground. He dropped instantly. He told them what little he knew. Johnny had shown up the night before, crying, said he had a fight with his mom and just needed a place to sleep. The story held together just enough. Police believed him. They pulled Jake and his family to safety. But Johnny stayed behind, silent, waiting, or hiding, or worse. The officers already knew who they were dealing with. 19 years old, recently released from jail. He had assaulted an officer during a car theft. Now he was barricaded inside a friend's home, armed, unpredictable, and maybe worse. The officers called his mother, hoping she could calm him, but she didn't pick up right away. She was already trying to reach them, because a voicemail had just landed on her phone. It was from Johnny, and it didn't sound like a cry for help. It sounded like the end.
Hey, Ma, it's Johnny. I'm crazy. I'm evil. I'm sorry. I'm not well. I'm dying as we speak. I love you. I'll see you later, okay? I love you.
Once officers realized that Johnny's voicemail wasn't a cry for help, but a goodbye, everything changed. They weren't walking into a simple assault case. They were stepping into something much darker. To avoid an ambush, they sent a surveillance robot into the apartment. Its job was to sweep every room and confirm that Johnny wasn't setting a trap. What it revealed twisted the story in a way no one expected. Johnny Ryder wasn't alone. Inside the apartment with him was his girlfriend, Cassandra Bjorge, the same Cassandra who barely appeared in the original police report. Just a name in a cloud of confusion. But now she was center stage. The robot's camera showed the two of them locked inside the bathroom, barely conscious. Both had tried to end their own lives. But why? The warrant was issued because Johnny attacked his sister and her boyfriend. It was violent. Yes, but not the kind of crime that drives someone to end his life. And why would Cassandra go with him? Her name was barely mentioned. Just a few arguments with Johnny's sister. Nothing that explained this. Paramedics rushed them both to the hospital. Johnny's condition was critical. Doctors said it would take at least 3 days before he could be questioned. That delay gave investigators time to dig, and what they found cracked the case wide open. They started with Johnny's mother. She confirmed something the officers hadn't noticed in the chaos. When she got home that night, Johnny wasn't driving the car he usually drove. He left it behind. Instead, he stole his sister's SUV, which made no sense. When police asked what car he had shown up in, she hesitated. It wasn't his. In fact, she'd never seen it before. A strange Mazda SUV. No plates she recognized. Detectives ran the registration. And that's when the floor dropped out. The vehicle belonged to Randall Bjorge. It was the first hard connection. Randall Bjorge, the same man whose home a patrol officer had visited a week earlier for a welfare check. A check requested by a concerned relative who hadn't heard from him or his wife. No one had answered the door that day, and police had left without entering. Now Randall's car had shown up at a crime scene, abandoned by Johnny, who just happened to be dating Randall's granddaughter, Cassandra Bjorge. All the threads were pulling toward one point, a dark center hidden behind a front door that had been locked for days. Investigators moved fast. They headed straight to Randall's house. They didn't know what they were about to find, but whatever it was, it had already begun to rot. When officers arrived at the home of Randall Bjorge, they did what they had done a week earlier. They knocked. They waited. They hoped someone would answer. No one did. But this time they couldn't just walk away. Now they had probable cause. The owner of this home had been missing for days, and his car had just been recovered from a teenager with a violent record and a stolen vehicle. This time they broke the glass. The second they stepped inside the house, the air turned thick. There was a heavy stench, not just rot, but layers. The sour bite of spoiled food, the acrid sting of cigarettes, and beneath it all, something unmistakable. The smell of decay. It was silent, but nothing felt still. In the kitchen, they found leftovers left to rot. Empty pill bottles scattered across the floor, half-smoked cigarettes still in trays. But what made it worse was what they found in the living room. A blanket, pillows, as if someone had been sleeping downstairs, not just passing through. Living. But why would anyone sleep in that filth? With bedrooms just a staircase away. Why choose the one part of the house that reeked like a dumpster? The answer was waiting upstairs. One of the officers moved toward the staircase. Step by step, the smell of decomposition grew stronger. With every breath, it thickened. What he found at the top wasn't a body. Not yet. First, he found the doors, sealed shut, lined with white caulk. The same caulk they found downstairs. The same caulk used to silence something. They pried the doors open. Inside were not one, but two bodies. Randall Bjorge and his wife Wendy. Both had been dead for at least a week. The medical examiner later confirmed the timeline. But even without a clock, the scene spoke for itself. This wasn't peaceful. This wasn't natural. Wendy had been bludgeoned in the head, her neck cut open. Randall had suffered the same. The house was immediately locked down as an active crime scene. But this scene wasn't like others. It wasn't just gruesome. It was full of fingerprints, shoe prints. The weapon had been left behind. Whoever did this hadn't even tried to cover their tracks. That could mean one of two things. Either it was a break-in, a robbery that escalated. Someone who got in, took what they wanted, and ran. Or someone had been living here after the fact. Someone who wasn't afraid of being caught. Someone who believed no one would come looking. That theory got stronger with what came next. An investigator found a receipt crumpled on the floor. Dated April 6th, days after the time of death. The purchase was for clothes that hadn't left the house, which meant whoever made that purchase came back to this home, ate here, slept here, after what happened upstairs. This changed everything. It meant the killer wasn't a stranger. It was someone close enough to come and go without raising suspicion. Someone who could walk through the neighborhood unnoticed. Now the detectives had a new theory. Johnny Ryder and Cassandra Bjorge weren't just connected to this case. They were inside it. But the question was no longer if they were involved. It was who struck first, who planned it, and most chilling of all, why. The answers weren't in one place, and that was the first sign this case was different. In most homicides, the question of why eventually leads to a person, a motive, a moment, but not this time. Because in the Sewanee precinct, detectives already knew part of the answer. 17-year-old Cassandra Bjorge was not just a troubled teen. She was already on probation for attacking her own grandmother, the same grandmother who took legal custody of her, along with her husband, Randall Bjorge. In the past year alone, police had responded to their home 31 times. Most of the calls were the same: reports of Cassandra running away, or Cassandra turning violent. Sometimes the reports suggested the grandparents were harsh. Other times it was clear Cassandra was spiraling. But that changed. Because when detectives walked through the house, they noticed something else. Every wall, every room, every corner was covered in framed pictures of Cassandra, smiling, laughing, posing on vacations, as a toddler, as a teen. She wasn't an unwanted child. She was the center of their world. So how does someone destroy the people who gave them everything? Was it love? Was she under the influence of Johnny Ryder? Was it his idea? Because the timeline said everything changed the moment Johnny entered her life. The last 3 months before the murder were filled with fights, police calls, threats, and silence. Her grandparents had grown deeply concerned. They didn't want her near Johnny. They didn't want someone with his history around her. A 19-year-old with a violent past, fresh out of jail, and recently divorced from a previous marriage. That was enough to set off alarms. To them, Johnny wasn't a boyfriend. He was a threat. And maybe they were right. Because now Randall and Wendy Bjorge were gone. And Cassandra wasn't missing. She was hiding. The detectives believed Johnny had changed her. That he was the force pulling the strings. That he had led her down this path. But they were wrong. Because what was coming next would flip that theory upside down. While investigators were still piecing together theories about what could have driven someone to commit such a brutal act, news came in from the hospital. Both Johnny Ryder and Cassandra Bjorge had stabilized. They were conscious, coherent, and ready to be questioned. According to the working theory, Cassandra had been manipulated. That she was a teenager in love, under the spell of an older boyfriend with a criminal past. That she had followed him blindly into darkness. So the decision was simple. They would start with her. Because if Cassandra was just a girl in love who got pulled into something bigger than she could handle, she would say it. She would break. She would point to Johnny as the reason this nightmare happened. But what investigators didn't know yet was that Cassandra had her own story to tell, and it wasn't the one they were expecting.
I think you know why I'm here. I just need to understand why. Talk to me, please. What I can't talk to you unless you be honest with me.
I wasn't the one who intentionally thought about doing that.
Thought about doing what?
Say it. Once you say it, it's out.
Killing my grandparents.
Why would you do that, sweetie? Tell me why.
I couldn't take it anymore. I didn't know where else to go. I didn't know what else to do. And then one night I just got really, really angry and depressed, and I don't know, I just felt like the whole world was kind of just collapsing on me. And
what Cassandra said at the hospital didn't match the theory detectives had been building. She didn't say she was pressured. She didn't blame it all on Johnny. She didn't even act like a victim of manipulation. She had her own reasons, her own story. And if that was true, then the idea that she was just a teenage girl swept up in a toxic romance was about to collapse, especially considering there had been over 31 police reports tied to her in just 1 year, most involving conflict with her grandparents, assault, runaways, verbal threats. This wasn't new. It was just the first time it had ended in silence. Detectives realized the theory wasn't strong enough to stand, so they turned to Johnny. But Johnny refused to talk. He shut down the moment questions began. He asked for a lawyer, and the room went cold. With no answers from him, the team circled back to Cassandra. She was the only one who could fill in the missing pieces. Why it happened, how it happened, and what exactly took place in that horrifying week between the killings and their arrest. But this time detectives tried a different approach. They brought food, sat down across from her. No handcuffs, no pressure, just small talk and takeout. It was unconventional, but it worked because Cassandra started talking, and once she started, she didn't stop.
Whatever you have to ask me, I'm good to talk about.
And I guess your boyfriend Johnny, how long you date that dude for?
Like 3 months.
3 months.
Is he okay?
Yeah, he's fine. So he sends his regards and all that stuff. So
is he doing okay?
No, he's fine. Okay. Yeah, he actually is better off than you. You know, they weren't that deep or anything. So he didn't.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Man, I could have sworn he did worse than me, because I remember when we were in the bathroom, because he did it with me too. He kept going, and I kept telling him to stop. So
yeah, maybe this tougher skin. I don't really know. I guess let's start from scratch about what happened, starting from when you ran away, I guess.
I didn't really run away. My grandma kicked me out.
Okay.
Cause this is what happened. I was chilling with Johnny and my other friend Sabrina, and I came home because it was time for curfew. Because I didn't want to violate my probation, so I came home. And my grandpa was asleep, and my grandma got really mad at me, and she was saying oh, if you don't like it here, we're just gonna find somewhere else for you to stay. And she just said that out of the blue. She just got really mad for some reason. And so I was just if you're gonna find another place for me to stay, I'm just gonna leave.
So I guess when do you decide to go back to your grandparents' house in the middle of the night?
It was a couple days after, 2 or 3 days.
Do you remember Saturday, Sunday? Do you have an exact?
I don't really remember. I didn't really even know what day it was that we went into the house.
And before you did that, did you and Johnny meet up somewhere at a park or something to talk about what was going on?
We went to Peace Ridge Park, and we talked about it. At first, it wasn't my idea at first.
How did you even what was said? How did you even bring up? What was the context?
He first asked me, "Are you afraid to die?" And I said no. And then I asked him, "Are you afraid to die?" And he said no. And he was just talking about how we could run away together, that kind of dream. And he asked me, he was would you kill your grandparents? And I kind of hesitated for a minute. And I was why? And he was just I don't know, because he knows probably everything that I've been through with all of my family. And he understands that, all I really wanted to do was just kind of get away from everything, kind of just move on with myself. I wasn't having a good relationship with my grandparents. It started getting really bad, that I got a charge from them because, I fought them, I might have broken, my grandpa's ribs when, for that charge for simple assault and simple battery, And it just got really worse. We just kept arguing all the time, and then, I don't know.
Cassandra didn't cry. She explained everything to the detectives like it was a plan she had made peace with. She told them her relationship with her grandparents had collapsed, that living with them felt like a cage, that they had become the obstacle she needed to remove. So she did. But that was only the first move. Because the plan wasn't just about her grandparents. The next step belonged to Johnny. He was supposed to take out his entire family, his mother, his sister, her boyfriend. They had decided that no one would be left standing, and when they failed to finish that second part, when police arrested them after the assault at Johnny's house, they knew it was over, and that's why they tried to end their lives. Not out of guilt, but out of fear, because getting caught meant one thing: they'd be separated forever, and the first crime would come to light. Cassandra then walked the detectives through what happened that night. She admitted she was the one who ended her grandmother's life, that Johnny was the one who ended her grandfather's. Her voice was calm, focused, almost matter-of-fact, but there was something she didn't talk about, something she was clearly holding back. The missing week, the days between the murders and the arrest, what they did, where they went, who they saw. That truth didn't come from her. It came from someone unexpected. One of the lead investigators had a daughter, and that daughter had once been close to Cassandra. She mentioned something strange, that during the week her grandparents were dead. Cassandra was sending out invites to friends, telling them to come party at her house. Her exact words were that her grandparents had gone out of town, and the house was free. Most of her friends declined, all except one, a girl named Sunshine. So as Cassandra sat in the interview room, detectives were already reaching out to Sunshine, and what she was about to confirm would flip the investigation on its head.
Did you ever hang out with Cassie at her grandparents' house?
Yes.
You probably already know where I'm getting with this.
Yes, I was inside the house while they were dead. I didn't know that they were dead.
Yeah, that's understandable. Just, I guess let's back up then. When, because that's the main thing, obviously I'm curious.
I don't know when exactly it was, but they had been inside the house for a while because you could smell it once you walked inside the house.
Now you're saying it smells like shit. What did it?
I didn't think anything of it because...
Did you ever ask him, like, why does it...
I did, and Johnny said that it was just because he hadn't flushed the toilet.
Right after Cassandra finished her story, the investigators received a message that changed everything. It wasn't a theory. It wasn't a rumor. It was hard proof. A video sent directly from Sunshine, and with it, the entire tone of the investigation shifted. Cassandra hadn't just stayed in the house after the murders. She hadn't just lied to her friends and said her grandparents were out of town. She had invited people over. The video showed her and Johnny, laughing, whispering to each other. Their body language was clear. They weren't afraid. They weren't hiding. They were enjoying themselves. One floor above them, their grandparents' bodies were left to rot behind sealed doors. The house was already a grave, but for Cassandra and Johnny, it had become a hideout, a hangout, a stage. The video didn't just expose their lies, it exposed their state of mind. There was no panic, no regret, no trace of hesitation, only two teenagers, living inside a crime, and pretending it never happened.
Hey, Cassie, who's Sunshine?
Sunshine?
Uh-huh.
She's one of my friends.
What's her real name?
Kieran.
Kieran?
Kieran.
What's her last name?
I don't know.
Was she at your grandparents' house?
She's been there before.
Was she there during when you guys were hanging out there? You gotta take a look at that. That's you and him, right? Is that at your grandparents' house? It sure looks like the living room of your grandparents' house.
How would that be possible?
Who's taking that?
That couldn't be at my grandparents' house. There was no one at my grandparents' house, so that could have been at my grandparents' house.
Well, I mean, I didn't shit this out. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Who, you know what I'm saying?
That must have been before.
Who's over there?
That might have been like Izzy or Sabrina.
But your grandparents didn't like Johnny, so why won't we see you at your house much?
Like, he didn't go to my house at all. Like, I mean, that couldn't have been at my house. It had to be in someone else's house because we had no one at my house. It was just me and Johnny.
I mean, you've been honest with me. I saw that, and it, obviously I've been at your grandparents' house. You know what your grandparents' house looks like, and just even the stuff said almost seems after the fact. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Anything else you want to tell us? Anything else you think we should know about any of this? No? Okay. Did you guys hurt anybody else, steal from anybody else, do anything else?
No.
We're not going to find a body in Johnny's trunk?
No.
After investigators uncovered what Cassandra and Johnny had truly been doing in the days following the murder, there was only one thing left.
I wonder how much vicious cruelty it takes to leave someone to putrefy. Did he die quickly? Did Cassie see his face? Did he see Cassie's face? Someone he loved so much, someone he was so proud of.
It is sad to me that the first time they visit my house and meet my children is in a paper bag from a funeral home.
I just continue to be stunned that you sealed areas so that you could make sure the smell of decaying human flesh wouldn't be noticed, that you had parties and ordered Chinese food with two people that you had brutally murdered lying upstairs.
During the legal proceedings, Cassandra Bjorge and Johnny Ryder did what many killers do when the walls start closing in. They turned on each other, each one blaming the other, each one swearing they were just a follower, just scared, just in love, just caught up in something too dark to stop. But in the end, they both confessed. They were convicted of 3 charges: murder, aggravated assault, theft. The sentence was brutal. 2 life sentences plus 21 years each, with the possibility of parole after 60 years, which means unless the system changes or time forgets, they will spend the rest of their lives behind bars. They won't breathe free air again until they're in their 80s, but even now, Cassandra hasn't let go of the outside world. She's been spotted on inmate dating websites, posting photos, writing bios, looking for connection, friendship, maybe even love. But here's the question that haunts every thread of this case. Does she realize that by the time she sees sunlight again, the world she's reaching for will no longer exist? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more true crime documentaries. See you in the next video.